Last Sunday, I was due to give my final talk on one of the gifts of the Spirit. We've been going through the list in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 this past term. And last Sunday's talk was going to be on the gift of faith. Well, today, I'm going to flip that around. Rather than look at the gift of faith as the Holy Spirit gives it to us, I'm going to look at how God is faithful, that we can put our trust in Him. Let me read you a testimony. It was my great grandfather who moved here when he was a boy with his family. From all accounts, it was like heaven. There was plenty of food, lots of space to run and play. They were treated as royalty. Certainly, compared to their previous home, it was a real step up. God blessed them hugely, and they weren't slow to give Him their praise and thanks. But then there was a change in the government, and everything went pear-shaped. As my great grandfather grew up, married, had his own family, things just got harder and harder. The green fields turned to mud. The sounds of children playing and laughing were drowned out by groans and anguish as subsequent generations were forced to slave away on physically demanding building sites. Songs about God, His love for us, and His power over evil seemed to dry up in the baking sun. Yet still, they clung to God. It's now been 6 generations since those days of fun, food, and festivals of faith. Hope is scarce. Our recent history is bleak. Our present day is bleak. The future is bleak. And yet, somehow, in the midst of all this, my heart is stirred to tell of God's faithfulness. I know it doesn't make sense. I know my experience screams something else, but I just can't let go of God. And I don't think He's let go of me either. Well, that was my best estimate of what it would have been like for an Israelite living in Egypt in the time before Moses appeared. Let me read to you from Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6 to 9. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be His people, His treasured possession. The Lord did not set His affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you are the fewest of all peoples. But it was because the Lord loved you and kept the oath He swore to your forefathers that He brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping His covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love Him and keep His commands. He is the faithful God, keeping His covenant of love to 1,000 generations. In the time before Moses, that would have been hard to hear. That would have been hard to keep a hold of. Everything seemed contrary to God being faithful. Everything seemed contrary to God being loving and compassionate. God proved his faithfulness as he rescued his people from slavery. But God didn't become faithful when he rescued them. He didn't become trustworthy as they left Egypt. See, God was still faithful. God was still trustworthy right in the midst of the time of slavery. The experience of the slaves might not have matched their belief in God's faithfulness. But God's character always trumps our experience. God is faithful, and we can put our trust in him.